Okay, we shall start. Good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome all our panelists and participants to this webinar. This webinar it's called Citizen Engagement, Accelerate the Clean Energy Transition, and it's organized under the umbrella of the EU Sustainable Energy Days. And we're here to present 5 different and very relevant initiatives and projects financed by the EU that deep in this very important topic, renovation, citizens-led renovation, and the transition, but most importantly, all driven by citizens. My name is Tatiana Pasquel Garcia. I represent one of the initiatives that is going to be presented today, the Smart Cities Marketplace, and I'm here with different colleagues from the other initiatives. The the panelists are presented in the agenda here in front of you in the slides. Our first speaker will be Georg Hoben, Policy Officer from DG Energy, and also the Policy Officer of the Smart Cities Marketplace. I will be briefly also presenting our initiative, the Smart Cities Marketplace. After that, Mr. Martin Willemart from DG Grow will be presenting the Affordable Housing Initiative. Mr. Kaspar Alef from Tartu City will be presenting the Open Lab and their project and the co-creation experience that they have in Tartu Living Lab. The ATELIER project will be here represented by Thomas van Dijk, who will talk about open source home energy management and share the experience that the project has gone through in Amsterdam. And last but not least, my dear colleague Len Peters from ThinkE, also part of the marketplace, but here to present another project, the citizen-led renovation project, and tell us about the experience on this project. At the end, we will welcome questions from the audience and we'll have an interactive panel discussion. So please, during the presentation, keep your ears up, put on your thinking caps, bring the questions to the end. We'll be happy to answer all of them. And you can also, of course, put it in the chat and we'll address them at the end. Okay, without further ado, I'll give the floor to Georg to set up the scene for this webinar and for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you, Georg.
Yes, thank you very much, Tatiana. Welcome, everyone. So I'm in the happy situation to deal with a number of urban or local initiatives. Tatiana also mentioned it already. I'm dealing with the Smart Cities Marketplace, but also with the Covenant of Mayors and the Covenant of Companies. And that's actually a lucky coincidence because the local level is extremely important. It's a bit the leading theme of also this webinar and even the EU Sustainable Energy Week as a whole, like lower bills, greater skills. That's saying already a lot. So what are we looking at today and what context are we moving in? Now, when we look at the local level, which is made up of, in our case, cities, municipalities, companies, but also citizens, we see that this specific context is always a bit at the front line of events. We had some sort of peak events over the past few years. We had COVID. Now we have the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, which had a massive influence, a massive impact on local interventions, be it in the health sector and more recently in the energy sector. And then, of course, we have climate change. Climate change led, especially in the past few years, to dramatic exceptional weather conditions. We had storms, we had floods, we had dry periods, and so on and so forth. So all this actually gets to the city or the local level immediately. So people, citizens, but also the administrations, the companies are really confronted with that in the very, very first place. And that's also the reason why the Commission has launched the Repower EU framework to actually do something about it, to do quick have an intense and quick and undivided response to these events. The second thing, of course, is climate change. And looking into what could possibly help with climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, we very quickly come to the conclusion that possibly renovation is one of the biggest chunks of this work. So renovating houses, renovating buildings is one of the biggest challenges, both in terms of the actual budget going into it, the funds which we need for it, but also the skill level and the support from citizen level, which brings us back to the leading theme of today's event. So putting it all together, we come to the conclusion that actually no clean energy transition or becoming climate neutral in a bigger sense, taking the headline of the Green Deal, will not be possible with local stakeholders. And mostly, of course, citizens, because if citizens do not get engaged in this process and do not actively support and benefit from the clean energy transition we aim to achieve, embedded in this whole concept of climate neutrality, will actually not go very far. So this session, I feel, is a very, very good representation of a number of interesting initiatives, projects, efforts being made in this area that is both renovation, but also citizen engagement. So I'm quite looking forward to hear all the experts' views. And I told it to Tatiana at the beginning, I would basically stay around. I'm in listening mode, so I'm invisible, I'm muted. But should you feel like towards the very end, not intervening with panel discussions, of course, but should there be anything you might want to ask the Commission directly? I mean, I also have my colleague Martin, of course, in the panel. But if there is anything specific you want to ask me, please do so. I will stay around for the whole session and wish us all an interesting, insightful, great session. Let's hope we take something home and can pass the message to our respective citizens, partners, colleagues, and so on. Thank you very much, and have a good session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georg, for those encouraging words and the scene setter. Indeed, the initiatives presented here will shed light on what's going on the ground, and I hope you enjoyed it. But I'll start. So for the participants, please, can you turn off your cameras? Thank you very much. There was somebody there. Yes. So the marketplace, the Smart Cities Marketplace, is the initiative that is organizing the session. Hence, I'll take a couple of minutes to present for everybody to present our initiative. So let me just share my screen very quickly, and there we go. I hope you can see my screen now. Yes, there you are. And well, the Smart Cities Marketplace, it's a platform that aims to help cities and towns in Europe to deliver more sustainable urban environment. A little bit of the history of the Smart Cities Marketplace. We're a hub where we gather a lot of information of past projects financed by the EU, and we have a wealth of solutions, technical solutions, smart solutions that have worked in several cities in Europe. So we also seek to bring this as inspiration to others that are looking to implement smart solutions. What do we offer? Well, as I mentioned, this repository of solutions, smart projects, this hub where you can find all these solutions. And what makes us interesting, we just don't share only information, but we also help cities and communities to bring these solutions to reality. What we offer is an array of matchmaking services that go from one-to-one consultancy to technical assistance, financial masterclass, webinars such as this one, and so on. And to make sure that project proposals that are to be implemented in cities receive funding. We have also a network of experts that are part of our community. And once a proposal is bankable or investment ready, we're happy to introduce to several investors that can work with these proposals. And of course, we also are like to interact with our peers, counterparts, and learn what's going on in the ground. So we also host a forum for focus and discussion groups. Our trajectory can be summarized in 4 steps: engage, explore, shape, and deal. In the engage part, it's where we go out there into the world and try to bring as many people as possible and bring attention to our initiative. And once we get them hooked, we try to inspire them with the information that we have in our website of what solutions are out there available and have worked. The shape part, it's where we support on the ground projects and provide assistance to fine-tune these projects and action plans. And once these are ready, we go to the deal part, which where we aim to go, that's the end goal, create these opportunities and relations for financing. As I mentioned before, we have a network of investors, but a little bit more about this in the next slides. We are not alone. We're part of a big ecosystem at the European level. We collaborate with all the initiatives that you see in this slide, but very closely and on a day-to-day almost with the Covenant of Mayors, Net Zero Cities, Scalable Cities, and the European Covenant of Companies. The solutions and projects that we focus on are related to these 3 topics mentioned here: buildings and energy, mobility, and digital. And within those 3 topics, we also have lots of interactions with the other initiatives that you see in the slide. A little bit more about our website. We have a very our website's a very lively tool. You can find the information of all these projects. We have also made a very big effort through the years to get quality data of these projects, core data that became picked up to develop your project, if you were to have one, or submitted to us, into a bankable solution. We also have, among other things, policy papers, solution booklets, and so on, but I want to shed light a little bit on what a publication that is called the Smart Cities Guidance Package, which is how to make your city as smart, and it's a document that will guide you step by step through the process. We, of course, also put a lot of effort in making our information as welcoming and friendly user as possible. So we have lots of videos and podcasts as well. The core of our activities, as I mentioned, is the matchmaking. So you can join our matchmaking events and meet investors and project representatives face to face. We announce our matchmaking events on our website and also through our different social media channels. So you're welcome to join, and the next ones that are coming. Our network of investors, it's growing, and it started 3 years ago from 0, and now we have more than 17 investors with us, which makes us really happy. Some of them are not mentioned in the slide, but I just mentioned that we also work with prominent banks that are very keen into receiving project proposals from cities. How do we support the mobilization of this investment? Well, we are very conscious that not everything, one size doesn't fit all. So we have developed a number of customer journeys. So depending on your profile, you will get the ad hoc guidance to you. But we try to focus a lot on city-led consortiums, so cities putting forward their proposal for funding and financing. We also pre-assess this, which is already part of our services, how your proposal is done, what is it missing, does it need a little bit fine-tuning, and we provide support with that before this is ready to go and receive mentoring with investors, or already have a deal meeting where you can access funding. Something very interesting from this contract, which has been renewed for the next 4 years, is that we can now offer one-to-one consultancy services and in the local language. So let's say you have you're a city, a municipality in Bulgaria, and you have a project that you're working on. You can submit it to us. We'll assess it, and depending on the needs, we can put you in contact with somebody working in the topic that your project it is in Bulgaria, and you can have up to 10 days of free of charge consultancy to make your proposal ready for investment. We also support, provide financing masterclasses that are open to all, and we also put a lot of effort and support on and peer learning. So we support focus and discussion groups. There's a little bit of a difference between these. Anybody is welcome to both, but discussion groups are more into a topic, and focus group are more focused on developing a project that can access financing. I think I have said the most important things about our initiative, but if of course, you're more than welcome to join our events. We are out and about, and we, in this part of the contract, we also look to go into more local events and go and see people in the ground. So you can perhaps see us in your next event here in Brussels or in your own country. Recently, we just had a very successful event in Germany, and we aim to do the same in different other countries in the EU. This is a bit of our community. We are growing and growing every day, and these are all the social media channels where you can find us. And if you take a picture of this or scan it for later, you can follow us on all our social media channels and hear from us. If you have questions at the end of our initiatives, I'll be happy, and Georg also will be happy to reply, but do please look for us on our website, and we'll be happy to attend to you. Thank you very much, and that it would be all for me. I will give now the floor to the next speaker, which will be Martin Willemark, Policy Officer from DG GROW, the European Commission, and he is here to present the Affordable Housing Initiative. Martin?
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Can you just confirm that you can see my slides, please?
I can see your slides.
Great.
I can see your slide. Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martin Wilmar. As Tatiana said, I'm working in the social economy units in DG GROW, and I'm managing the Affordable Housing Initiative that I will present to you just now. Just a bit of context to complement what my colleague Georg said, how the initiative was actually born. It was in 2020, so at that time we had around 34 million people in the European Union living in a situation of energy poverty. With the Ukraine crisis, some estimations are actually saying that now almost 80 million Europeans are actually experiencing or living in a situation of energy poverty. Back in 2020, 800,000 social homes had to be renovated annually, while the investment gap when it comes to social and affordable housing per year was 57 billion euros. We're also in a situation of post-COVID pandemic where huge support to the construction ecosystem was actually needed with all the bottlenecks, the inflation price of the materials. While also another issue was the housing crisis. And the pressure on housing and dwellings, especially in big cities, that was already present before the COVID, but with the crisis in Ukraine, for instance, and the COVID, the access to affordable dwellings were even more pressing than in 2020. Then the last aspect, which is about the energy consumption, but also the greenhouse gas emissions of buildings and the building stock in the European Union, which respectively account for 40% and 36%. This is how the renovation wave, the EU renovation wave, was put into place. It was initiated by the Green Deal, which is the major green transition strategy by 2050, sorry, of the European Union, and it comes along the recovery plan for Europe, which is the strategy to refinance and rebuild Europe after the COVID. The renovation wave is also very important because it aims to actually double the renovation rate, which was at 1% per year to 2%. So to renovate 25 million buildings by 2030 and also create 160,000 additional green jobs. As Georg mentioned, the construction, but all the ecosystems around are also very much impacted by the lack of skills and competences when it comes to renovation of energy efficient dwellings. This is how the Affordable Housing Initiative was born, with the objective to pilot 100 lighthouse renovation and construction districts in 10 years, with a couple of key features. So here we talk about social and affordable housing. So it goes a bit beyond the social housing values and principles, because it doesn't only target the housing for the most vulnerable groups. It is at district level, so we don't want to renovate or build a dwelling or building, but at district level to ensure economies of scales and also ensure the regeneration of the neighborhoods. We have this integrated approach to go beyond the energy efficiency, which is the prerequisite, but also we have the social innovation, the community engagement, the use of human-centered technologies and data in the framework of these projects. And then the fourth key pillars of our initiative is the potential to replicate. All the projects that are financed under our initiative have a big replication potential, and we are really trying to find the indicators and the KPIs to make sure that you can replicate these methodologies and these practices in other districts. Last but not least, the Affordable Housing Initiative is a flagship of the new European Bauhaus, which is basically one of the big drivers of the European Union policy now, which combine the sustainability, the aesthetics, and the inclusion in the same line. We have three streams of implementation for the Affordable Housing Initiative. The first one is the European Affordable Housing Consortium, which is basically a partnership at European level, which replicates all the relevant actors that are involved in a renovation or construction of a social and affordable housing district, which you can find at the end of the slide. So we have the construction ecosystem, but also housing associations, the local and regional public authorities, investing parties, but also last, the residents and other local stakeholders, which are very important and very relevant in this context. What this consortium will do in the 2 years of the project, basically they will support 20 lighthouse districts out of the 100 that I've mentioned as an objective. You should know that at the moment 13 have been identified and will be supported in different upcoming events. They have applied for support in different areas, but some of the areas where they have actually applied for support is when it comes to tenant issue, community engagement, creation of energy communities, etc. Then the consortium will also work on 3 blueprints for replication of good practices. And one of the blueprints is on what we call this social innovation. So it will address the issue of split incentives, how to engage the occupants, or also to use the role of mediation and one-stop shops, how to deal with co-ownership models, creation of energy communities and cooperative, etc. They will also publish a handbook of good practices, which I would invite you to have a look. It will be published in a bit less than 1 month. And community ownership, but also tenants engagement is part of the questions and issues which are covered in these good practices. Then if we go to the second stage of implementation of our initiative, it's done through Horizon Europe, which is really the research and innovation funding program of the European Union. Here at the moment, we have 3 different projects under the call Social and Affordable Housing District Demonstrators, which different objectives and processes, but they are actually all meeting the same objective, which is to test and implement new methodologies and have this replication potential towards other districts. On the one hand, we have the DROP project, Here they really focus on the digitalization with the experience of one of the peer cities, but also on the growth creation potential of creative and cultural industries. This is with another city, which is Matera, which has been the European Capital of Culture a couple of years ago. So in this case, we have one lighthouse district where the methodology and it, as a demo case will be implemented, and then two peer cities which will contribute to this methodology, but also replicate in their renovation of affordable housing districts later on. We have ProLight with two big focus. One is the setting up of energy communities, and another focus with three districts with basically energy and resource efficiency renovation as a focus. Here we really have the awareness creation, active and responsible citizenship, the behavioral aspect, which are sometimes lacking and challenging in the renovation. And as I said, we have six districts involved with 2 and 1, 2 and 1 on the two different topics of focus. And then the last project is Supershine. Here we have different focus. One of them is basically what we call hybrid or alternative financial solutions, such as crowdfunding, public-private partnerships, but also green public procurement. And in that case, there's also a big focus on involving the municipalities and local authorities in the projects. And they also have this multi-channel focus, so to also access and manage to actually onboard private owners, owners-occupied dwellings, but also all the tenants and the social housing. And then if we go to the third stream of implementation of our initiative, it's the European Social Innovation Competition. This competition basically happens every year with a different topic. The objective is really to support the social innovators. May they be universities, think tanks, businesses, SMEs, but also municipalities, in having these new ideas, creating these new relationships in the financing, in the managing, depending on the topic and regardless of the sectors. The topic of 2022 was the future of living, innovation for affordable and sustainable housing districts. And here, one of the three award winners is Sostresivic, which basically is an organization in Catalonia, close to Barcelona, which really promotes and put forward an alternative cooperative housing model to also solve the issue of the lack of affordable housing in Barcelona. And then the topic of this year is fighting energy poverty, which is very timely. Unfortunately, the deadline has just passed, but the award winners will be known in November. And what the solutions that were actually looked for in this year challenge were ranging from monitoring of, for instance, energy expenditures to awareness raising, specific target groups, but also creation of energy communities and joint investments. So that's in a nutshell my presentation, but very happy to answer questions afterwards, should there be one.
Thank you very much, Martin, for your presentation. As you mentioned, please keep questions to the end to the public. We'll be collecting them all. Our next speaker comes from the city of Tartu. This is Kaspar Aleph, and he will be telling us about the Open Lab project and the renovation work in Tartu and the communities and how they have managed with citizens and their communities. Kaspar, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, just a moment. Sharing my screen right now. Let me know if my slides aren't showing. I think they are.
We can see your slides. Yes.
Great. So yes, thanks for the invite. Yes, I'm here to talk about our Green Deal project called Open Lab, and more specifically on how we work with the apartment owners in order to trigger renovation activities in Tartu. First of all, quickly about the project. It's a 54-month-long project that's lasted so far for 18 months. And we have other partners over Europe with Genk and Pamplona from Belgium and Spain. And Estonian partners are City of Tartu, who I represent, Then we have research institutions of Tartu University and Tallinn Technical University, NGOs in the form of our energy agency and Institute of Baltic Studies, and also on board our energy producers as the largest energy producer in Estonia, Eesti Energia, and GREN, which is our district heating network service provider. So who we are working with, you can see the picture on the background is the picture of the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood of 22 apartment buildings, which all are privately owned. There are no municipal apartments or property in there. All the apartments have private owners, and the apartment owners form a housing association that has to manage its property, its surroundings, and also do necessary renovation works. So all in all, over 1,500 apartments, over 3,500, around 3,500 inhabitants, and a very diverse neighborhood with different languages, different backgrounds, different ages, different income groups. But unfortunately, so far, no deep renovation actions, just some maintenance work. And what we're trying to do is to trigger deep renovation actions in this neighborhood, because we see that there is a risk of social decay in this region, because these buildings are getting old, and there are technical issues piling up, and if there's no actions, then no visible deep renovations, then we see that more able apartment owners are going to move out of the neighborhood, and the less capable ones stay, and in the future the renovation works is even more difficult. So our goals is deep renovation of at least 3 buildings. We're going to use prefabricated renovation elements in high-rise buildings. We're going to take buildings into near zero energy building level, and this includes obviously integrated and regular PVs, electricity storage, EV charging, creating energy communities on the basis of buildings, but also adding digital twins and digital twin on neighborhood as well for planning purposes. But also social innovations like Innovation Living Lab, creating a renovation as a service that we are able to duplicate on other neighborhoods in Tartu. Also adding a local hero campaign, energy communities as a technical innovation. It's also a social innovation, and there's also a lot of co-creation in defining what the deep renovation should provide for the citizens. But I'm not going to concentrate on technical stuff today, but on one specific case on how we work with the citizens and how we get results. So yeah, there's many meetings with the people and heads of the association. There's information days, obviously. We have met with all the managers of all the buildings. We are creating relationships with the people so that they know we are trustworthy and we know how they operate and what type of assistance they need. Then we have been mapping with them all the issues in the neighborhood, but also doing it through a neighborhood-wide survey. Then we are also trying to create relationship among the neighboring apartment buildings, having meetings with neighboring housing associations together so that people get to know people in the neighboring building. But then obviously the usual public information exchange as well through direct mail or information in public space. But we also endure the elements and go above and beyond just conversations. Here's a photo of a snowstorm in March when we were in the neighborhood talking with citizens, being there to have conversations, to explain, to answer questions, and address any fears that citizens have. So day to remember conversations in the blizzard. But a co-dreaming laboratory, something that we organized in last September. And the goal was to understand what people are expecting from deep renovations in their buildings. What are the things that worry them? What are maybe the solutions that we haven't thought of when planning renovations in these buildings? And so that we could create a comprehensive list of works that we can later approach the construction companies and ask for prices on different works in a typical building, so that we can create a building configuration and price estimation tool for the managers, for ourselves, but also the citizens that live in these buildings. So we worked with people in a World Cafe method. I'm sure it's a well-known method, but I assure you it works really well. We invited dwellers, apartment owners from 10 different buildings in this area. We invited 5 people per building, so we got around 50 participants. We organized people. We had 6 themes. We organized people so that people from the same building would be around different tables. And we had experts with playbooks to guide conversations in different subjects. And we organized the event on Saturday. And obviously, we had food there so that everybody would be happy, blood sugar would be high, everybody would be in good mood, and willing to take part. So yeah, we worked in 5 different fields. In this, there was the exterior of the building and balconies. There was heating and ventilation. There was surrounding area, the public space. There was staircases, and the 5th one was cellars. So different aspects of the neighborhood and building, and the one project member was responsible for one specific subject, and after every 20 minutes, the specialist went to next building, next table, so having same conversation with different people about the same subject. So here's our tip from how to prepare for this and what to keep in mind. So first of all, for these experts, you should have a playbook and also some values. It always helps to have prepared tangible physical materials so that it gets some conversation going. It's not just not talking, but maybe pictures. You can see on this photo here, there were some photographs, mapping tools. Then you should always make sure that all participants in the table get to have their opinion. And when dreaming, as we did, make sure that you don't get stuck in cost issues, or why something why something wouldn't be doable, or why something is impossible. So you can see many happy faces on this final photo here. The results of our events was that we did get many new ideas that we hadn't even thought of during preparing for this meeting or preparing for meeting with the constructors. We also got approval from a lot of the work we done earlier. We could see that we were on the right track with our project members. Many of these people became like ambassadors of renovation in the neighborhood, and communicated our values, but also were able to take down some of the fears that their neighbors or friends might have. We did get this comprehensive list of works that we were set out to go to, and this was a good basis for engaging construction companies. And after working with the construction companies, we also managed to create this configuration and estimation tools that we set out to do. And now we are working with the housing associations in order to get the final renovation decisions from at least 3 buildings. So thank you for your attention. I hope this was of interest to you, and here's my email if you have any more questions.
Thank you very much, Caspar. I really like the Code Dreaming Laboratory. That's a very, very nice and engaging name, I would say. Okay, let's go to our next speaker here. I would welcome our colleague from ATELIER and WAC, Thomas van Dijk, who will be addressing the topic. We can see your screen with many windows.
I
Thomas,
saw it.
or is it Len?
Yeah, that was the wrong screen. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes.
So Thomas will be talking about his experience or the experience of Atelier in the city of Amsterdam, and he's here today to present open source tech for citizen engagement and energy communities. So Thomas, now we can see your the screen with your presentation. So please go ahead. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm Thomas. I work at WAG, an NGO in Amsterdam. And we are a partner in the project ATELIER, which, as you can see, is obviously an encrypted acronym for Amsterdam Bilbao Citizen-Driven Smart Cities.
Thomas, I don't
Yes.
want to interrupt you. Do you want to turn on your camera?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We cannot see you, unfortunately. Thank you.
I thought everybody had their camera off. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm not that shy. Okay. There we go. Thanks. So the obvious acronym, the project is about positive energy districts. There's 30 partners all over Europe. There's 2 main lighthouse cities where there's construction work happening, and there's several challenges both on policy, technical, and social aspects. And there is several methods within this whole project where all these lessons are shared and the lessons learned are distributed amongst these different stakeholders. In Amsterdam, there is 2 buildings, of which one is to be built. It's already built, and the tenants will start living there in summer already. With the idea of producing more energy than that they consume. Now, this is for only the building complex in Amsterdam complicated, so there's also the plan to look in a bit of a broader circle and include other projects in the neighborhood. WAG is mostly researching the socio-technical dimension, which comes down to questions of how do tenants and people that live in these buildings can share energy with each other, can share data that represents the energy with each other in a fair and open and transparent way. If you think about how energy can be shared and how our energy system is constructed, originally, obviously, it was sort of a public affair. It was the state that produced the electricity network, at least in the Netherlands. But over the last decades, many of the energy companies have been privatized. And this public-private partnerships you see obviously in more areas of the economy. However, with more and more electric vehicles, solar panels, heat pumps, and different appliances that add flexibility and different production capacity at different households, the energy system is transitioning into a more decentralized system. So to manage this, we've seen many public-private or private initiatives that try to combine all the different solar panels in the neighborhood or all the different heat pumps and see if they can manage them in a clever way, smart, to optimize the grid and to make sure that all these different renewable decentralized sources can be integrated in the grid in the most efficient way. However, there is a third way to organize this, where you see here that the cloud, where the different data of separate households are being aggregated, there is not really communication amongst the households. And many of the technology of private companies is built, is designed in order to really supply and take care of the individual, household. Make sure that it's as smooth and easy as possible. However, the third way, in a more civil way, is what you see happening more and more, at least in the Netherlands, where energy cooperatives are emerging. So in an energy cooperative, the value and the aggregation of the data is much more accessible to the individual households, which has the benefit that also these households in an energy community can make agreements with one another of how to share data and energy. I think due to the emphasis on public-private partnerships in many subsidy programs, in many investment programs, in many heads of how to think about how to organize energy systems, but also the economy in a larger scale, I think the public civil partnerships have been too few, and it would be great if the energy transition can function as sort of an example to formalize more public civil partnerships. And this would mean that the shared resources that we as communities, as a country, as different citizens living together in a street can share amongst state, civil, and private actors. Benefits of having a more civil cooperative approach is that the technology that is being developed in these contexts is much more open to a collaborative practice, to transparency, to shared control on data, and that the profit actually lands at the community itself without having a lock-in with the company that wants to build on their business case and therefore not share the way how it is aggregated. However, most of the technology that has been developed in this sphere is currently still closed, private intellectual property protected technology, which has benefits, obviously, because there's more funding available for these private initiatives, and they have a better control on how they want to sort of make different systems interoperable with one another. If we look at home energy management and want to engage citizens, it is important that different appliances and different tools can talk to each other, that there's interoperability. It is also important that open source technology is used to make transparent how data is aggregated and where value is something that big tech has pioneered. So companies like Facebook, now Meta, and Google have pioneered in the use of strategic open source technology and open standards and interoperability to create their massive, large-scale worldwide networks of services. So it is important to, next to these two principles, also have a strong focus on energy communities that can actually use and implement the open source tech that builds upon these open standards. I will briefly go through these 3 points. That if we look at open standards and interoperability, the energy transition and the Internet of Things world is coming together. Matter is a new protocol that's been last year or the year before launched, and it's been supported by all the large companies, including Google, Facebook, Amazon, Samsung, and all the big players in the Internet of Things world. Next year, they will also include a way to manage the energy consumption in homes. So very clearly, you see that these large corporations are very interested to also include the services of home energy management into their portfolio. Network protocols are important in order to communicate for the different devices amongst one another, and data models that actually entail the amount of capacity available in a home battery, or the amount of energy or power available when you charge your car, can be accurately described in a data format which is also readable by other appliances. This was the first principle. The second principle is that open source technology that builds on top of these open standards is important to have transparency of how energy can be shared amongst households and analyzed, and the value that is added, it is clear what the margins are and how the community can actually benefit by aggregating their data. So we are at the moment looking very technically into a citizen science activity where we have 10 households that we equip with Home Assistant, with Raspberry Pis, and have them control their energy appliances. And the big benefit versus private cloud services is what you see here, where you see the red line from your app, from your phone, when you would use, for example, a private Philips system, you can only access it to the cloud. If you follow the blue line using an open source Home Assistant tool, you can also directly in your local network communicate with all your appliances internally. And this means that the control that to engage citizens and communities in how energy is shared is put at the household instead of at the cloud of a private company. So there's many different open source tools available, which is very exciting to see, and why I think this is a super interesting time when the energy transition is still happening, to actually put an emphasis on these technologies instead of on the more closed source initiatives. However, many of these tools can also work together, obviously, and many private initiatives can also benefit from a public open source digital infrastructure. Now, there is a trend that also large corporations and more software is moving from software as a service, which is proprietary, to more and more open source initiatives, simply because this allows for faster scaling, for more transparent collaborative efforts, and to less lock-in, as if you develop an open source software, anyone can basically build it and supply a service that you would want the software to provide. So the third pillar, on top of these open standards and open source technologies, is energy communities. They're on the rise in the Netherlands, and what you see is that they start to organize themselves very interestingly and also develop collaborative software. And this is something that I think is a great example, not only for the energy world, but in many worlds, of how cooperatives can collaborate on a global scale with open technology to actually implement that what is necessary on a local scale. So these are the three pillars that I believe should be promoted, facilitated, and strengthened at the same time. If you only do the first two in a public-private partnership and speak of community engagement, then I think you miss the point and you strengthen these large tech companies in their position to include more and more domains for advertisement purposes, for very individual, smooth service and data-driven apps, but that do not actually strengthen the communities engage citizens in the energy transition. So thank you for your attention, and I hope we can together build with more open tech on an energy transition that engages citizens and stakeholders in an open and transparent way.
Thank you, Thomas. Open, transparent, and inclusive. I like that trio. Thank you very much. This was very interesting. And now I'll give the floor to my colleague Len Peters, who is here to present the experience from one of her projects, the citizen-led renovation initiative. Go ahead, Len. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Thomas, can you stop sharing the screen, please?
Yes, do please, Thomas. Len,
yes,
you
done.
should be.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So also from my side, welcome all of you. I'm going to take you in a couple of minutes to what the support service for citizen-led renovation is, how that fits a bit in what you've heard so far, how we approached the concept, given the challenges that are related to the concept. And then I will end with what I see as your way of helping this initiative to have more effect. So the main important thing behind the support service for citizen-led renovation is to gain an understanding in how energy communities, which Thomas already said are picking up not only in the Netherlands, but in a lot of member states, how they can help increasing the renovation rates in residential buildings mainly. It is a challenge, as Casper already said, working with Estonian citizens owning the places, so not public buildings. So that in Open Lab is a real challenge, but we see also in the Smart Cities marketplace that increasing that renovation rate for especially private buildings is not so self-evident. The concept of citizen-led renovation in itself is also not straightforward. It is not a researched thing. It was actually a concept that was put forward by an advocacy group, and there's something in it, but it was not fully transparently delivered before the European Parliament actually said it might be interesting to start a pilot on it. What I mean with that is that the examples that were typically used and that are typically used to explain what citizen-led renovation actually is are all services where an energy community engaged with external experts on energy, who then, or when they hire themselves, the experts, and would then charge people who would use the service for an energy audit or a full support throughout their full renovation, whether they're members or not. However, what is really interesting is that it could be something that where the energy community can act as a trusted partner, a partner when they were, people would go first to ask for advice, and that could actually reach out to a number of individuals that would be more hesitant to go to other services. And especially in light of the fact that in the new EPBD, there is the reference that member states have to set up one-stop shops for renovation as a compulsory thing. It is really interesting to understand how the citizen-led renovation concept can be positioned compared to these one-stop shops with both the same goal, namely increasing the renovation rate with the different residential buildings. Now, as Tatiana said, with Smart Cities Marketplace, we focus specifically on the cities, and then Martin went down to more at the district level renovation. Casper focused on how do you do that in these multifamily buildings, these apartment buildings, where you saw from what he explained that people in one building are not so natural in talking to people in another building, which would put a challenge already on what Martin actually aims with at the district level renovation. And then Thomas focuses mainly on the positive energy district. So it's again the district level, but with really that emphasis on going beyond the current standards. The support service for citizen-led renovation fits a bit in all of these structures, because it works with the citizens independent of who they are. The only thing is they would probably be the owner of their residential building. What you see is that citizen-led renovation, and that's also what Casper mentioned with the pilots in the different countries, that he emphasized that you need to build relations. And that, I think, is the key emphasis of trying to see to what extent energy communities could really help in delivering an additional service to help people with their energy renovation. And the fact that he mentioned the different member states, so Spain versus Tartu versus Genk, that actually brings another aspect. That is why we have multiple pilots as well. And that is different countries are completely different, not only in the way they build, but also in the way that people interact with each other. When we go, for example, to Romania, it's a very hierarchical structure, and people are used to that and feel comfortable with that. Go to Germany, go to Belgium, go to the Netherlands, then we have a much more jointly decision, a much more joint collaborative decision-making process. And that is really important, that if we set up structures to support energy communities with helping setting up this citizen-led renovation as a service that can be continued after the project we do with them, that we take into account these cultural differences. So these exchanges between people like Martin, Casper, and Tatiana and us on these aspects is really important for each of these projects. And that's why initiatives such as this webinar are not only interesting for you, but often also for us. What does the support service for citizen-led renovation really do? We got 8 applications and 6 additional ones that we're researching whether we could help them complete it for pilots of energy communities, whether they're joint. We have a number of joint applications. We have a number of single energy communities that really aim to set up citizen-led renovation as a service towards their members. While the call was open also to one-stop shops who wanted to develop a service for energy communities and use these energy communities then as a kind of a leverage towards all of their members, we got no application in with such a group. However, knowing that one-stop shops will be compulsory, we will be, of course, working with with one-stop shops in the pilot countries as well and the pilot locations. But the idea is that we will help them setting up, on the one hand, their administrative structure, developing a pipeline of renovations, helping them to find, how do I find qualitative people to help us with the audits? How do I set up our structure so that we can go to financing solutions? What could be the financing solutions? How do we engage citizens? How do we communicate to them? How do we build trust with them? And what are a number of technical solutions that we say, this is something you can do yourself, and this is something where you clearly need external help. We do take into account, of course, the legal and regulatory system in the different member states. That implies that we are not going to publicly encourage that people start helping each other with changing a beam or even putting attic insulation, because it sometimes conflicts with social security legislation and black economy. So we're very careful on that. But the idea is really to move to structured services that will be operational on the long term. The current phase 1 project takes until the end of December next year, and we'll only have 2 to 3 pilots, which is of course very limited to make sure that we can get the right policy recommendations out of this, and that we can have enough experience with collaboration with one-stop shops, with collaboration with the diversity of people, whether they're in energy poverty or whether they're in a more economically better position. And that's why we introduced 2 boards. One is the follower and the lighthouse boards. So if you feel like we have an energy community or we are a one-stop shop or setting up a one-stop shop in our city, do not hesitate to get in touch with us, because we could take you along as one of the followers. Or if you say we have done very similar things specifically for energy communities, we'd be very happy to share our experience. You can be engaged as a lighthouse. The aim of the lighthouse and the followers is really to make sure that we get experience from the non-pilot countries, and that helps to jointly say, okay, dear European Parliament, this is what we really see as a concept that would work, that is robust, and with maybe these deviations in the different member states. Aside from that, we have an enablers board that is mainly people from the European Parliament and high-level people, but however, one of you could fit in there as well, where the idea is really like, how does that now fit in the policy? What exactly does that imply? How do we see the aspects related to the energy performance of buildings? How do we see that fit into our ambition with regards to the positive energy districts, for which we aimed to go for 100 of them? So to wrap up, you could really collaborate and help us creating a bigger impact. If you are a one-stop shop aiming to work with energy communities, if you already do so, by sharing your questions in that board, who will only meet a couple of times, but will of course have an open communication throughout the project, where you share your thoughts, put your questions on the table, put your concerns on the table. And also, maybe if you're a city or a municipality, think about how your public energy community, which is one of the things the Commission put forward, that each city or municipality with more than 10,000 inhabitants should have an energy community. So you can see how that energy community could really take up the concept of citizen-led renovation and help you reaching your goals with regards to your CEAP or CECAP. That's it in a nutshell. All questions are very welcome.
Thank you very much, Len. Thank you very much to all the panelists. And now I invite you to please turn on your cameras so you are visible to the people that joined. Thank you. And before we go to the panel, I was wondering if there's any questions from the audience. If you would like to raise a question, please click on the raise your hand icon, and or use the chat box. Indeed, don't be shy, and if it's okay if you don't want to turn on your camera, we just can listen to you. But if you just want to type it, I'll read it and provide it and read it out loud and ask it to the panelists. I don't see any questions or hands raised. So let's start. Thank you very much, all of you, for your participation. Caspar, I don't see you. Are you still here? Can anybody see Caspar? Okay. I hope Caspar didn't go. But let's go through the questions that I have here then. Thank you very much to all of you. Very engaging, very interesting, and especially to hear all these different experiences and sort of in the different framework, but with certain nuances. One of the things that collective renovations are known for is that they're challenging. I mean, it doesn't have to be collective. As renovation itself, it is a challenging process. A lot, if not, it's known about the technical solutions. I think all of you have mentioned a little bit about this on your presentations. But when you do it as a group in a collective or in a be citizen-led or a district level or so, it is difficult to find common ground. I want to hear from you and your experiences, thinking, looking back to what you have experienced or research, what would be the three to-dos, the three key to-dos to have a successful project and have a successful project seen through and have your community engaged. So I'll give the floor first to the ladies. Len?
Okay. I'm going to use my experience also with putting a neighborhood battery in demonstration pilot as well. It is really important in the first, what Casper also said, building trusts. Just don't go there and start. It's not because we're in the topic that you can expect others to understand it. It's not because we know that the technology is safe or that a certain measure should be taken that others are on the same line. The other thing that I learned with that is really understand that you're not always coming in on a suited moment, even if you scheduled that with them. People have their own experience. They've had a tough day, these kind of things. And I really learned to, first of all, have respect for that. But then on the other hand, also learn that it's their mood isn't always because of you. And having respect for who they are and how they feel at that moment builds trust as well. It's also that being available that I completely underestimated when you're doing such an engagement project. They call you for whatever. I was once in the supermarket getting a phone call from one of the people in the pilot saying, the electricity broke down in our house. What do I have to do? And it was like, yeah, I'm in the supermarket. But that's what people expect. So that's really what I learned, that engagement is a really important thing. And we sometimes do expect them to be much more aware of what we are working on than what you could expect. Even explaining a simple graph is something that is needed. Sitting together on a table with them on a Sunday afternoon is really, really needed. And that is the aspect of building trust. And it's something that I think time-wise is definitely underestimated in most of the engagement projects that we set up.
Thank you, Len. So building trust, respect the given moment that is available for the people involved, and being available. Those are the 3 to-dos. Thomas, based on your experience in Amsterdam, do you want to have a go on this question?
Sure. I think I already shared my 3 points, which is use open standards for interoperability, use open source for transparency and trust, and build energy communities that use these first 2 and enable them to actually apply this. And if these 3 things are done in parallel, if in funding projects, if community groups have these 3 things always in mind, it not only builds trust, but it also helps to ask the right question. So if you have a private company that provides you a certain solution, it's a very fair question to say, okay, how interoperable is your solution? Are we locked into your service? Why don't you use some of the open source technology that actually is available? And be sharp on that, and also ask, like, okay, how do you provide the community with the ability to engage? Because I think many companies, and I think this is generally a trend in the digital world, and if many things are start to digitalize, or at least be affected by the digitalization, is that it's sort of a consent-driven, individual-oriented system. And there is not the notion of a community, of a civil engagement, or the tools and the invitation for this. So you are asked to press OK to cookies. You are, as an individual, then sort of being placed in a situation where you should be able to say where you consent to. But this is actually a ridiculous situation, because no one has a clue. And as an individual, you cannot really make these decisions properly. So I think if you strengthen these communities and you use initiatives like Lane and the others that have been presented by Martin, and at the same time really be sharp on open standards for interoperability and open source technology for trust and transparency, then I think we're on the right track in terms of citizen engagement in the energy transition.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So we go back to your 3 keywords: open, transparent, and inclusive. Then that would be your message. Okay. I'm afraid that Gaspar has left us, so we'll continue. We'll continue with the panel, but we have Martin here as well, that gave a very interesting presentation about this very ambitious initiative by the Commission, the Affordable Housing Initiative. Martin, from all the exchange that we have had today here, and they shown very different realities from different parts of Europe. You as a policymaker, what would be your main takeaways from today that can benefit and help you in your work as a policymaker in the framework of your initiative?
Yeah, I would have loved to answer also the previous question, but
Please
I
go
think
ahead.
Are you sure we do have time? Just maybe in a few words, I think, because yeah, we've heard many also. I mean, the previous speakers also, they are very into the project, but also from the different project that I've seen, I think just in terms of making the information available and adapted to the different groups in the housing, in the dwellings, this is one of the very key successful approach that you can have. I think that the second one is also, and this also joins a bit what Lynn was saying, to put yourself in other people's shoes, regardless if you are the developer of the project or the municipality. But I was, for instance, seeing a case where the municipality was actually inviting the people from the dwellings in the city hall to have such workshop bottom-up feedback. But those people were actually first sometimes not keen to go there, and second a bit impressed by the city hall, and second they didn't consider maybe elderly and disabled people. And if you consider these people, sometimes maybe even the elderly people do not have a remote connection to participate to the meeting. So I think also what is at stake is often very, very complex, and you really need to put yourself in the shoes of the other participant and entities in the project. And then the third point I wanted to just also highlight is, if you involve the community and local entities at the planning and implementation level, it's one of the successful factors for successful projects and delivery of the renovation. But also following the intervention, when you have the rebound effect, when you also have communities which are not used to, use these new technologies, the monitoring systems, the different apps that my colleagues have mentioned, this is also very important to have like a follow-up approach following the renovation. Then I will go super fast on this one. I think Lean already made a marvelous conclusion by saying that these kind of events, and from all the case studies that I've listened, I think it's of key importance to basically create synergies. We have many innovation, successful methodologies at different levels, at the districts, at the dwelling renovation, driven also by municipalities. But sometimes there's such an avalanche of case studies and of projects that we don't know where to actually start. So we also need to talk to each other, make sure that people in local authorities, that business support organizations such as incubators, that social housing associations, that those people talk together. And this is also linked. We do not always need to reinvent the wheel, because some of these methodologies have been developed or are currently being developed and just need to be disseminated depending on the local indicators and factors on the ground. And yeah, I think that would be maybe the last sentence on my side. I think working in a bottom-up approach, as we have seen, considering all entities with a multi-actor approach in different projects, with owner occupiers, with social housing, with private rental tenancy. This is basically the key. And in that regard, there is really a key role of regional and local authorities, from the public procurement clauses at the beginning, but also in how they disseminate and they empower the community on the ground to create energy communities, to create community-led renovation, in these districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I'm always happy to hear from policymakers, or when I hear policymakers very enthusiastic about this bottom-up approach and listening to this, what things are happening on the ground, because in my experience, what you hear when you go to different communities in different parts of Europe is that Brussels is so distant and they don't know what they're talking about, and this is not what I need. But if I hear you, I understand that there's this effort and willingness to, no, it's not from us, and we know the magic pill and to solve all your problems, but we want to hear from you, from these projects, and learn. And in one of our previous exchanges, you said something about questioning these assumptions that there are already from different parts of Europe. So that's where I was sort of going on. I wonder if any of the other panelists want to come back or say something else, replying to what Martin has said, or.
No,
Okay.
I follow what he says when he says creating synergy by combining stuff. I also follow what you say when regards to the distance towards Brussels is massive. We see that also in Smart Cities Marketplace, where the language barrier is a massive language barrier. And
indeed,
in several member states, citizens do not see what Europe does. And then you can say, okay, Bulgaria, Hungary, these kind of things. But we see it also in Belgium, where when you would really ask people, like, do you know what on the energy policy is decided at the local level, what at the regional level, what at the national level, and what at the European level, it is nowhere transparently summarized. It is not obvious to people to figure it out. And so because of that layer of vagueness around policy as well as regulation, if you ask what a DSO is allowed to do, what a regulator is allowed to do, what a policy is allowed to do, even with experts, it's very difficult to figure that out. So I think it's also really up to us to communicate much, much better about who we are, to build that trust. What is policy doing for you in a language they understand, in their language and in their communication means? And if we don't do that, we're not going to have an inclusive energy transition at all.
Thank you, Len. You're absolutely right. And indeed, we have seen this in the Smart Cities Marketplace. And that's why right now we have this new approach and going local, having this one-on-one consultancy, like communicating in their own language and knowing the nuances of their situation. I completely agree with that approach. And I think this is where Brussels is also moving forwards, but it's indeed difficult to, one, as an expert and living here as well, sometimes it's very overwhelming to find all these myriad of initiatives and projects and so on. And I can't imagine the situation on a small community in let's say Bulgaria, Hungary, and so on, being much more overwhelming. And it is indeed to us these initiatives to make this to make our communication easier, to make things user friendly, and to put it all in one place. At least that's where we're aiming in the Smart Cities Marketplace as well, to put all the steps on how to become smarter in one place, all the information on technologies that work in one place, policy recommendation at all level, all in one place. I think I did a little bit of marketing for my project now. And we are almost running out of time. So I will invite you to say some closing words. And if there's no more questions, this would be it for us. So, so Len, you have started, but now I let Thomas say his last words, his closing words.
Thanks. Thanks. I think it's interesting to see so many synergies and also the good intentions of really meeting these local initiatives needs are, and at the same time, what I really miss is to also include the political and economical perspective in these equations. I think many of the energy poverty and the big gap in wealth is partly a result of a certain economical system where there's mostly attention for public-private partnerships. So if you do not question how technology is being used currently to strengthen these private companies that in a way led to many of the challenges that we currently face, then I think you somehow also missed the point. So I think it is extremely important to look how this technology that is being developed for all these different projects is governed, what happens to the data, and how can you get that at the communities and how that governed in a more fair and inclusive way. And I think you cannot do that if you also do not address the political and economical system that you wish to live in.
Thank you, Thomas. That is very insightful. And I think it goes back to the beginning of all this process, which starts indeed at the Commission when they launch this call for projects and so on. So to make sure that these things or these topics related to inclusiveness, transparency, and openness are respected or are considered from the beginning. Martin, would you like to?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And do not, because these words sometimes are very hollow. So I think I do not say open source is the answer for everything, but it does make it very concrete. So to me, that is also important to not lose ourselves in hollow sentences of community engagement without also showing, like, how do you want to change the political, economic, technical reality that is involved there.
Thank you. Martin, would you like to use your closing words replying to Thomas?
No,
here?
maybe just a few words on what's being said, and I didn't pick up on this. I completely agree that when it comes to this question, is usually the technical and the technologies availability is not the biggest focus, but at least I can say that when it comes to social and affordable housing, although these technologies and use of data are available, they are not usually channeled to those kind of projects as well. So beyond the financial and the social acceptance, this is also a challenge, although the technology is existing, is to challenge these technologies to the relevant project, also where investing and investors is a bit lacking. But no, I won't keep you for too long. I'll leave also 1 minute for Lean. But I think indeed, let's create synergies across the levels as well. Very happy to hear about all the different projects, and I hope we can be in touch later on. And also inviting all the audience to reach out and for instance using the new European Bauhaus community as a vehicle to also make sure this different innovations and processes can benefit other projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Len, do you want to close?
Yeah, a final shout out to all the participants here. As you see here, we are all trying to build something that would help all of you in delivering your goals. So don't hesitate to share your stories, your thoughts, and your concerns with it, even if it seems like irrelevant, maybe, to be taken up by a European contract or a European project, even if you see a small case study. But it is really important that we get access to the truth on the ground. There's so many reports out there that US experts on the ground immediately see this doesn't make sense. This doesn't show the full reality. But we often don't have much more than these reports or a phone call following it up. Having your thoughts, your concerns, your stories in a phone call or in an email or however you feel comfortable, allowing to set up a dialogue. Every story that you have will help us and policymakers to make our work more relevant and more robust and more tailored to your needs. So do not underestimate how we depend on you, but also how much power you have in helping us to change. So open call to all of you, raise your voice, and don't bother if your English isn't good. I mean, in Smart Cities Marketplace, in other contracts, we have every language that you need. We keep stuff confidential where needed, but do not hesitate. All of your experience might help us to make things more impactful.
But English, after all, is the most spoken language in Europe now. So
Yeah, but
we
even
all
then,
understand each
yeah.
other. Thank you very much to all the panelists. It's been my pleasure and honor to share the afternoon with you and the couple of previous hours and days of preparation. I'm really happy that you can join. Thank you, Georg, for also joining us, setting the scene, and thank you for to my colleagues of Steinbeis in Stuttgart that helped us with all the technical details and so on. And of course, thank you to the audience for joining us. Big thank you from us. Please do follow us on our social media channels. This has been recorded and it will be available in our channels. Good afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.